The CEO slammed his palm on the glass conference table so hard the water bottles shook. "Why is everything down?" Harlan Knox barked, his face red with fury. "Someone get IT support in here before we embarrass ourselves further." 50 executives turned to stare at me. I was the only person in the room with a laptop open, system logs scrolling across my screen, alarms firing off like sirens. Then he said it, pointing at me with 2 fingers like I was a misbehaving child. "Cole, don't talk. You're just IT support. Let the real strategists handle decisions." He crawled up my neck. My chest tightened. The humiliation hit me so hard my vision flickered for a second. He didn't know I'd built the entire system collapsing behind him. He didn't know this outage was happening because of a migration he'd forced through after ignoring every warning I'd written. And he sure as hell didn't know what this moment would cost him. Please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments where you're listening from. My name is Cole Merritt, and this is how the CEO who called me just IT support destroyed everything, while I walked away stronger than he'd ever be. He had no idea the board meeting was coming. Let me take you back 2 years, before Harlan Knox arrived with his expensive suits and condescending smile. Back when I was the quiet guy who built everything no one else understood. The data pipelines, the server architecture, the automation systems that kept the company running 24 hours a day. I'd been with TechVantage Solutions for 5 years, started as a junior developer, worked my way up to senior systems architect. People came to me for answers. Managers trusted my judgment. My work had saved product launches and secured major contracts. I didn't want power or recognition. I just wanted to do good work and be respected for it. The old leadership understood that. They valued expertise over ego. Then everything changed. The board brought in Harlan Knox as the new CEO. They said he was a visionary leader who transformed the company. I should have known then that transformation wasn't always good. Harlan Knox walked into the office on his first day wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. His expression looked like he smelled something sour everywhere he went. He scheduled meetings with every department head. When it was my turn, he didn't ask about the systems I'd built. He didn't ask about architecture or scalability or security. He asked who took credit for projects, who got promoted, who had the CEO's ear at the last company. I tried to explain our technical infrastructure. He cut me off. "I don't need the technical details, Cole. I need to know if it works." "It does work," I said, "because we've built it carefully over the years." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Good. Keep it that way." The meeting lasted 8 minutes. I left his office with a knot in my stomach. Something about him felt wrong, dangerous, like he saw people as obstacles instead of assets. My first real meeting with Harlan went even worse. We were reviewing the platform roadmap. I'd prepared a presentation about scaling challenges we'd face as the company grew. Technical limitations, infrastructure needs, budget requirements. 3 slides in, he interrupted me. "Cole, all this technical jargon isn't leadership. Keep explanations simple. I don't have time for complexity." I tried again, using simpler terms. He interrupted again. "Just make it work. Don't overthink it. That's why we have technical people, to handle the details so leaders can focus on strategy." The other executives shifted uncomfortably, but nobody defended me. Nobody said, "Actually, understanding the technical details is important." They just nodded along with whatever Harlan said. After the meeting, my manager pulled me aside. "Just give him what he wants. Simple updates. No deep dives." "But he needs to understand the risks," I said. She shook her head. "He doesn't want to understand risks. He wants to hear that everything's under control." That's when I realized Harlan didn't want competence. He wanted obedience. The first public humiliation came during a platform review with the entire engineering department. There were about 40 people in the room. I was presenting a scalability issue we needed to address before it became critical. Our database architecture couldn't handle the growth projections Harlan had announced. We needed to redesign core systems. It would take time and resources, but it was necessary. I was mid-sentence, explaining the technical constraints, when Harlan cut me off. "Cole, leave the strategy talk to adults. You're here to fix laptops and keep the servers running." The room went silent. A few people laughed nervously. Most just stared at their notebooks. My face burned. I stood there frozen, unsure if I should sit down or finish my presentation. Harlan looked at me expectantly. "Are we done with the technical complaints?" I nodded and sat down. For the rest of the meeting, I didn't speak. I just sat there, feeling smaller with every passing minute. Something inside me broke that day. Not completely, but a crack formed, and I knew it would only get wider. A month after that meeting, Harlan promoted someone named Tyson Avery to Director of Technology Strategy. Tyson was 26 years old, fresh out of business school. He'd worked at TechVantage for exactly 7 months. His technical experience consisted of managing a small team at a startup that had failed within a year, but he was confident, charismatic. He spoke Harlan's language, buzzwords and vague promises about disruption and innovation. My position wasn't even considered for promotion. I'd been with the company for 5 years. I'd built most of the systems we relied on. I had a decade of experience, but I didn't play corporate politics. I didn't speak in buzzwords, so I got passed over for someone who barely understood how our systems worked. Tyson started giving orders immediately. Orders based on articles he'd read and conferences he'd attended. Orders that ignored the technical reality of what our systems could actually handle. And everyone just nodded and agreed, because Harlan had chosen him. Nobody dared question Harlan's judgment. The disaster began with Tyson's first big initiative. He wanted to migrate our entire infrastructure to a new cloud platform. He claimed it would increase agility and reduce costs. He presented fancy slides with graphs and projections. Harlan loved it, approved it immediately. I was assigned to make it happen. But when I reviewed the proposal, my stomach dropped. The migration plan was fundamentally flawed. It ignored data dependencies. It underestimated complexity. It proposed timelines that were physically impossible. I spent a weekend writing a detailed memo. 10 pages. I explained every risk. I backed it up with technical documentation, system logs, and timeline projections. I showed exactly why this migration, done this way, would cause catastrophic failures. I submitted it to Tyson, copying Harlan and the CTO. I waited for questions, for a meeting, for someone to take these concerns seriously. Instead, I got silence. For 3 days, nobody acknowledged my memo. Then Tyson forwarded it back to me with one line. "Let's discuss your concerns after the migration succeeds." 2 days after I sent the warning memo, I received an email from Harlan. No subject line, no explanation, just 3 words. "Proceed with migration." Harlan. That was it. Months of work, years of experience, detailed technical documentation showing exactly why this would fail, all dismissed in 3 words. I printed the email. I saved it to 3 different locations. I documented everything, not because I was planning revenge, but because I knew what was coming, and I knew I'd need proof that I'd warned them, that I'd done everything right, that the disaster wasn't my fault. I also started keeping personal backups of all my work, system designs, code repositories, architecture documents, everything I'd built over 5 years, just in case, because something told me this wouldn't end well, and I needed insurance. A week before the migration was scheduled, Harlan called me into his office, just the 2 of us, no HR, no witnesses. He didn't ask me to sit. He stood behind his desk, leaning forward with his hands flat on the surface. "You tech guys always think you're smarter than everyone else," he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes were cold. "You think because you understand code, you understand business. You don't." I started to respond, but he held up a hand. "I don't need your input, Cole. I need your compliance. Tyson is leading technology strategy now. Your job is to execute what he decides. Nothing more." He leaned closer. "And if you can't do that, you're replaceable. Don't forget that." I stood there, staring at the carpet, memorizing every word, every gesture. The way he looked at me like I was dirt on his shoe. When he dismissed me, I walked back to my desk in silence. That night, I updated my resume. Over the following weeks, my role shrank. Suddenly, I wasn't invited to strategy meetings anymore. Emails that used to include me stopped coming. Decisions about systems I'd built were made without my input. I became the guy who fixes things when other people break them. Nothing more. Junior developers started coming to me with problems, but they'd whisper, "Don't tell anyone I asked you. Tyson wants us going through official channels." I wasn't allowed to solve problems directly anymore. I had to submit tickets through Tyson's approval process. Even for systems I designed, I watched my authority disappear. My expertise was dismissed. My warnings were ignored. I felt myself shrinking, not physically, but mentally, like I was becoming smaller and quieter every day. But part of me, deep down, was getting sharper, harder, more aware, because I knew something Harlan and Tyson didn't. I knew exactly how fragile everything they were building really was, and I knew I wouldn't be there to save them when it collapsed. The migration went live on a Thursday evening. Tyson scheduled it during low-traffic hours, thinking that would minimize problems. I stayed late, monitoring the systems from my desk. At 9:47 p.m., the first alarm started. Database connection failures, API timeouts, data corruption errors. By 10:15, it was a full disaster. Servers were crashing. Clients were losing access. Critical data was stuck in migration limbo. I worked through the night, 14 hours straight, writing scripts, rerouting traffic, manually fixing corrupted records. By morning, I'd stabilized most of the systems. Not perfectly, but enough that clients could access their data. I sent a summary report to Harlan and Tyson at 6 a.m., detailed what went wrong, what I'd fixed, what still needed attention. I got one response. From Tyson: "Thanks for the overnight work. Let's discuss the next steps on Monday." No acknowledgement of the warnings I'd given. No apology. Nothing. Just a dismissive thanks, like I'd done some routine maintenance. I went home and slept for 12 hours. Monday's discussion was worse than I expected. Harlan called me into a private review meeting. He sat behind his desk, arms crossed. "Cole, we need to talk about Thursday night." I thought he was finally going to acknowledge the disaster I'd prevented. Instead, he said, "You made this too complicated. If you'd built the system simpler from the start, we wouldn't have had migration problems." My mouth fell open. The systems were built correctly. The migration plan was flawed. I warned, "I don't want to hear excuses. The migration should have been seamless. That's your responsibility." Every word was a knife. Every sentence twisted reality further. He wasn't interested in the truth. He was interested in blame. And I was the convenient target. I left that meeting knowing something with absolute certainty. Harlan needed me to fail, because my competence made him look incompetent, and he couldn't tolerate that. Over the next few weeks, I watched Harlan carefully. The way he operated, the way he manipulated conversations, the way he took credit and deflected blame. And I realized something important. He didn't actually hate me. He feared me. Because deep down, somewhere in his ego-driven mind, he knew the truth. I'd built something he couldn't control. Something he didn't understand. Systems that kept the company running, but that he couldn't take credit for because he had no idea how they worked. So he had two choices: acknowledge my value or diminish it. He chose to diminish it, to make me seem less important, less skilled. Just IT support. Because if I was just IT support, then my expertise didn't threaten his authority. But the systems didn't care about his narrative. They ran on code and logic, not ego. And that terrified him. I started building a personal archive. Quietly, methodically. Emails showing warnings I'd sent. System logs proving what I'd built. Design documents with my name on them. Screenshots of ignored risk assessments. I organized everything by date and project. I backed it up to multiple locations. Cloud storage, external drives, even printed copies locked in my home office. I wasn't planning to attack anyone. I was planning to survive, because I could see where this was heading. Harlan needed a scapegoat, and I was becoming that scapegoat with every passing day. If I didn't document everything now, there wouldn't be any proof later. No way to defend myself when they inevitably blamed me for the next disaster. So I protected myself, in silence, while Harlan and Tyson made decision after terrible decision, and I documented every warning they ignored. The final straw came during an all-hands company meeting. Harlan stood on stage, presenting the company's technology transformation success story. He pulled up slides showing system improvements, scalability increases, performance metrics. Every single slide showed work I'd done, my designs, my code, my architecture. But when he explained these achievements, he said, "Our technology leadership, under Tyson's bold vision, has created a scalable infrastructure that positions us for the future." Tyson sat in the front row, nodding along. He glanced back at me once. His expression looked apologetic, but he didn't say anything. My name wasn't mentioned. Not once. My 5 years of work, hundreds of late nights, countless problems solved, all credited to someone who'd been there less than a year. I sat in the back row, watching my career being erased in real time, and I made a decision. I was done protecting people who didn't value me. The end came quickly. 3 weeks after that all-hands meeting, HR sent me a calendar invite. Meeting at 4 p.m. Mandatory. I knew what it was before I walked into the room. Harlan sat there with his legs crossed, wearing that same smug smile. The HR director sat beside him, looking uncomfortable. "Cole, we're restructuring the technology department," Harlan said. "Your role has become redundant." Redundant. The word hung in the air. The system he depended on every single day was built entirely by me. But I was redundant. "We'll provide a severance package. 2 weeks. Standard terms." I looked at the papers in front of me. Severance agreement. Non-disclosure clause. Non-disparagement language. I signed everything. Quietly. Not out of defeat. Out of clarity. Because I finally understood. This company didn't deserve me. And staying would only hurt me more. I gathered my things and walked out that same day. I walked past Tyson on my way out. He was standing in the hallway, looking pale. "Cole, wait. I didn't know they were going to do this." I stopped, looked at him. He seemed genuinely upset, maybe even scared. "It's not your fault," I said, and I meant it. Tyson wasn't the villain. He was just someone who'd been given power he wasn't ready for. He'd go along with whatever Harlan wanted, because that's what survival looked like in that company. "What's going to happen to the systems?" he asked quietly. I shrugged. "You'll figure it out." His face went even paler, because at that moment, he realized something. He had no idea how anything worked. He'd been taking credit for systems he didn't understand, and now the person who did understand them was leaving. "Cole, please. We need documentation. Training. Something." I shook my head. "I'm redundant, remember? I'm sure you'll manage." I walked out the door, and I didn't look back. 2 days after leaving TechVantage, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Cole Merritt," a woman's voice asked. "This is Patricia Holloway from Apex Systems. We're a consulting firm specializing in enterprise architecture. Your name came up in some industry circles. We'd love to talk about opportunities." I had no idea how they'd found me, but I agreed to meet. The conversation lasted 2 hours. They showed me projects they were working on, complex systems, real challenges, and they asked intelligent questions about my experience, questions that showed they actually understood the work. At the end, Patricia said, "We'd like to offer you a senior architect position, leading a team, building systems for Fortune 500 clients." The salary was 40% more than TechVantage had paid me, and for the first time in months, I felt that flicker of light inside me, the part that loved solving problems, the part that Harlan had almost extinguished. It was waking up. A week into my new role at Apex, my phone buzzed. Text message from Tyson. "Cole, the system's failing. Pipeline errors we can't diagnose. Nobody knows how to fix them." I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't smile. I didn't feel satisfied. I just felt tired. Tired of being treated like I didn't matter. Tired of being dismissed. And now they needed me. But they'd made their choice. I typed back. That sounds difficult. Best of luck. I didn't block his number, but I didn't respond to his follow-up messages either. 2 days later, another message. They're offering consulting fees. Name your rate. I'm not available, I replied, because it wasn't about money. It was about respect, and they'd proven they didn't have any. 3 weeks after I left TechVantage, a former colleague reached out. Someone from the finance department I had helped with data issues in the past. Cole, you didn't hear this from me, she whispered over the phone. But things are bad. Really bad. How bad? The system's bleeding data. Compliance flags everywhere. Clients are threatening to leave. The board is furious. What's Harlan saying? She laughed bitterly. He's blaming legacy systems and technical debt. Says the previous architecture was poorly designed. My jaw tightened. Legacy systems. The ones I'd built. The ones that had kept the company running for 5 years without major issues. Until Harlan and Tyson started breaking them. Is anyone pushing back? I asked. Not publicly, but privately. Everyone knows. They know you warned them. They know you kept things running. That validation meant more than I expected, but it didn't change anything. I'd moved on, and TechVantage would have to solve their own problems. A month after my departure, another text arrived, this time from someone in legal. Regulators are auditing us. They requested system logs. Specifically, documentation about that migration. My stomach dropped. Not from fear, but from realization. The warnings I'd sent. The risks I'd documented. The emails Harlan had dismissed. They were all about to become evidence. Evidence that leadership had ignored clear technical guidance. Evidence that they'd been warned repeatedly. Evidence that disasters were preventable. Do they have the documentation? I asked. Some of it, but there are gaps. Did you keep copies? I thought about my personal archive. Every warning. Every ignored recommendation. Every dismissed concern. I kept documentation for my own records, I said carefully. But I'm no longer employed there. I can't help. Understood. Thanks anyway. I hung up and sat in silence. The receipts were coming due, and I wasn't the one who'd have to pay. The collapse happened during a major client onboarding. TechVantage was a Fortune 100 company, their largest contract ever. $15 million over 3 years. The onboarding required migrating massive amounts of sensitive data. It should have been smooth, carefully planned, but without proper architecture, it turned into a disaster. The entire platform crashed. 47 existing clients lost data access simultaneously. Support tickets flooded in. The company's Twitter mentions exploded with angry clients. Screenshots of error messages spread across social media. Industry news sites picked up the story within hours. TechVantage Systems' failure leaves clients stranded. The stock price dropped 18% in 1 day. Shareholders demanded answers. And Harlan, the man who'd called me just IT support, was photographed leaving the office at midnight. He looked like a ghost. Pale, exhausted, broken. I saw the photo on LinkedIn, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No revenge. Just emptiness. This didn't have to happen. If they'd listened. If they'd valued expertise over ego. None of this had to happen. 3 days after the platform collapsed, my phone buzzed again. Tyson's name on the screen. He's gone. Just 2 words. Who's gone? I texted back, though I already knew. Harlan. The board removed him today. Emergency vote. No announcement yet, but it's over. I set my phone down and stared out my office window at Apex Systems, the company that had welcomed me, that valued my expertise, that treated me like a professional instead of just IT support. Harlan was gone, not because of me, because of himself, because he'd built a leadership style on dismissing expertise and blaming others, and eventually reality caught up. No press release could spin away a complete system failure. No charisma could excuse ignoring clear warnings. The board had receipts, and they'd made their decision. For the first time in months, I felt weight leaving my chest. Not because Harlan lost his job, but because his departure proved something important. The truth matters. Eventually, 6 months after leaving TechVantage, Apex Systems promoted me. Senior Vice President of Solutions Architecture. I now led a team of 40 engineers. We designed systems for major corporations. Complex, large-scale projects that required real expertise. My new CEO called me into her office one afternoon. "Cole, I've been reviewing your work. Your designs are exceptional. Elegant. Thoughtful." She paused. "Why were you never in leadership at your previous company?" I thought about how to answer. About Harlan's dismissals. About being called just IT support. About watching less qualified people get promoted over me. "I guess I wasn't what they were looking for," I said finally. She shook her head. "Their loss is our gain. Keep doing what you're doing." As I left her office, I realized something. The validation didn't erase the pain Harlan had caused, but it proved something I'd almost stopped believing. My work mattered. My expertise had value. I wasn't just anything. I was exactly what I'd always been. A professional who built things that worked. And now I was finally somewhere that recognized it. I never heard from Harlan Knox again. Never got an apology. Never received acknowledgement that he'd been wrong. I didn't need it anymore. Because his downfall wasn't my victory. Walking away and building something better, that was my victory. Getting promoted based on merit, that was my victory. Leading a team that respected my expertise, that was my victory. Harlan taught me something valuable, though he never intended to. He taught me that silence doesn't mean weakness, that being underestimated can be an advantage, that the people who scream loudest about leadership are often the ones who understand it least. I built systems that spoke louder than his ego ever could, and when those systems failed under his mismanagement, they told a story he couldn't spin away. Now, leading my team at Apex, I make sure every engineer knows their value. Every technical opinion gets heard. Every warning gets documented and discussed. Because I remember what it felt like to be dismissed. To be called just IT support while building everything. And I'll never let anyone on my team feel that way. That's the real lesson. Not revenge. Not vindication. Just the quiet satisfaction of building something that lasts. And knowing your worth, even when others refuse to see it.